In the 60s, there once was a radio station, KIX, unlike any other radio station in the Carolinas. WKIX Raleigh was known mostly for its AM station at 850 on the dial, but did simulcast on FM, which was, in the early 60s, a bit of a novelty. The AM frequency is where most of our listeners were. It was promoted in the early 60s as the Mighty 850. Then, in about 1962, it became known as Channel 85.
The Giant of the South.
That's what sticks in my memory because of the endless WKIX Channel 85 jingles that reinforced our name and dial position. Unless you lived in KIX country in the 60s and grew up with us in our station, you might not fully appreciate this story. But if you were one of those children of the 60s and had your radio locked into Channel 85, you just might want to roll your memory tape back to 1962 and listen to my tale.
Where you get your kicks.
For me, KIX was more than a radio station. It was a place in time. When I first joined KIX, the station was owned by Henderson Belk, the department store family man. The general manager was a former CBS announcer named Hugh Holder. He looked like a silver fox and had a voice like God.
WKIX, the Mighty 850 in Raleigh.
Raleigh's number one, WKIX, Channel 85.
In the early to mid-60s, KIX was an institution run by the inmates. Most of us who were on the air were college students or college-age people who probably would have worked at the station for free just for the privilege of being one of the KIX Men of music. I really forget what the pay was, but recall that it was always supplemented handsomely when the jocks did commercial appearances, usually sock hops at local high schools. My fee was $75 per appearance. The king of the record hops, and consistently KIX's biggest earner in my mind, was Tommy Walker. Tommy was already at KIX when I joined the station in 1962. I was hired by Bob Kelly, the operations manager at the time. Now, this Bob Kelly was Bob DeBartoleben, who later went on to become a fixture at WRAL-TV. DeBartoleben asked me to use the name Bill Bailey as my on-air name because he already had a jingle for a DJ of that name. I told him I wasn't too keen on changing my name, and I'd just pass on having my own jingle if it meant being called Bill Bailey. Eventually, when I started doing Afternoon Drive on the station, KIX sprang for a Gary Edens Show jingle.
It's the Gary Edens Show. Hey, Gare, is everything go?
That, of course, was a major investment to have a station actually buy a disc jockey a jingle with his real name in it.
WKIX, Channel 85. It's the Gary Edens Show.
Frankly, I forget who the various program directors were during the early to mid-60s at KIX. I think most of us just sort of did what we wanted to on the air. If Mr. Holder was happy with you, you really didn't need to pay any attention to the program director's edicts. For example, Hal Vester, who was someone in authority, had some sort of record sequence we were supposed to follow, but I usually ignored it. As long as the old man, Mr. Holder, liked you, it was okay. Of course, to win over Mr. Holder, it was expected that you'd occasionally have dinner with him at the Velvet Cloak where he stayed. Mr. Holder was actually a Greensboro resident, but stayed in Raleigh during the week. He'd host some of his favorite people for dinner at the Angus Barn once in a while. At those long dinners with Mr. Holder, we'd drink pitchers of beer and listen politely to Mr. Holder's well-known political philosophies. He was far to the right of Jesse Helms and horrified that JFK was our president. However, he was a great boss. Once I would convince him of what the station needed on the air, he'd usually give me the green light and let me do it. Even though I never had any official title in programming of the station, I was just another one of the inmates. One of my fondest memories was being allowed to go to Dallas and be at a recording studio for a session of new jingles for WKIX.
Nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina with WKIX Channel 85.
We probably owned every major jingle package that was produced in the syndication business in the 60s.
WKIX in Raleigh. Good morning. It's gonna be a KIX day. WKIX.
Good morning.
Coffee perkin',
Bacon frying.
Russ Spooner on your way with Radio 85. Good morning, coffee perkin', bacon frying, Russ.
There were hundreds of musical variations on the logo WKIX Channel 85.
Just for Kicks Radio. Whoa, whoa. WKIX Channel 85.
WKIX Channel 85. Go, go.
We are radio a go-go.
Swinging day and night. It's sunset with the cat's meow. We're WKIX Channel 85. Meow.
In those years, KIX was almost free-form radio. Each show had a different sound depending on which disc jockey was on the air. What did tie the sound together, however, was all those wonderful and perhaps overdone KIX jingles, contests, promos, and slogans.
It's Piggly Wiggly quiz time. $35 in the jackpot. Use that die to win.
We didn't just have contests, we had fun tests. We didn't just have weather, we had Weathermation. Our news wasn't plain vanilla news either. It was WKIX Pace Setter News.
WKIX Channel 85.
WKIX Pace Setter News. Good morning, this is Terry Bain with the 655 report brought to you by Clayton Tire Service, 435 East 2nd Street in Clayton. In the news this morning, President Johnson has disclosed the contents of the
Mr. Holder wanted everyone on the station to have a big boomy voice. Mine wasn't all that resonant, so I had to rely on all sorts of other gimmicks to have a distinctive sound. I used a time flogger, a bicycle horn, when giving the time. I had lots of drops. Those are voices with inserts promoting my show. They tell me I ran a tight board. That means I didn't have any dead air.
7 o'clock.
The Gary Edens show makes me sick. But then I'm a hypochondriac.
It's the Gary Edens Show.
Number 33 on our solid gold survey. This is Roy Orbison and Candyman.
One guy who didn't have the biggest set of pipes, but nonetheless went on to become one of KIX's all-time biggest names, was Charlie Brown. He was my old Carolina pal who worked weekends with me at WSSB in Durham in 1961. At WSSB on Sunday afternoons, we do a two-man show, dropping lines like, "We're sending our 250 watts to you."
By 1967, bring you happiness, health, prosperity, joy, and maybe a little bit of peace around the world. We certainly hope so. On behalf of everybody concerned with the Charlie Brown Show, thanks so much for listening. Glad we could spend New Year's Eve with you. Good night. Happy New Year, Lucy, and bye, baby.
Dream on.
Charlie Brown went on to become the heart of the radio station for many years to come. There were sure some great people who were at KIX in those years. Who can forget Tommy Walker? Now, Tommy did have pipes. Charlie and I always knew Tommy had job security with Mr. Holder because of that boomy voice.
The name of the song is I Like Rock and Roll Music, and it's Peter, Paul, and Mary, and I still can't really believe it myself. They're trying a new style, and they just could have a real big hit, too.
Then there was Mike Ranieri, the morning guy. He went on to fame in Miami.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mike Ranieri Show, starring bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Mike Ranieri.
Russ Spooner and his Spoonerisms.
Russ Spooner. WKIX Channel 85.
Boy, cold out there this morning. I got so much chapstick on, I keep slipping off the chair.
Russ eventually made it to WSB in Atlanta. Jack Kane.
WKIX.
KIX line requests at 851-3277 for Pikeville. Here's the Beatles.
Bob Jones was a talent. He was on the air middays. He was as good in the production room as he was on the air.
You're invited to take a magical trip down Strawberry Lane. Strawberry Lane. A wild, wonderful, flower-powered world of Minnie and Minnie and Mud and Maxie. Strawberry Lane has happened. Visit Strawberry Lane, an added feature of the new Reddick's Better Life department store in the Western Boulevard Shopping Center. Strawberries forever.
Good afternoon, Joe Goodpasture, WKIX
WKIX First Edition News. President Nixon went before a joint session of Congress today. He told them the 90-day wage price freeze will not be extended beyond November.
Then there was the late Al Smith, who was one of the best copywriters and voices in the business. The second Bob Kelly, Jim McCrudden, was a morning man. He later went into sales and now owns radio stations in the Midwest.
27 minutes till 9 on the Bob Kelly program, Friday morning style on this August 20th, 1965. And those are the Gentrys.
Pat Patterson.
It's 7:04. And time now to cut the medical red tape and get free medical advice as we ask Dr. Patterson. Thank you. Our first letter this morning, dear Dr. Patterson, I have decided to take up raising plants indoors to get in shape. I'm trying to cultivate poison ivy, white oak, sumac, and I seem to have developed a severe itching in my sternohyroid to my metatarsals. What can the matter be? Signed, Red. Dear sir, well, there is a strong possibility here, I guess, of a dietary deficiency, possibly plague, rabies, scurvy, or maybe even rachis epidermis. However, in my learned opinion, there is nothing to be alarmed about. I would suggest staying in the house, and you might also try rubbing on some of Uncle Zeb's magical liniment. Powerful medicine. Yes, Uncle Zeb wants you to know about pain relievers.
If you think that you can't make it through another day, take a sip of Uncle Zeb's and you'll be on your way. But you must not find a call, then throw the key away. Uncle Zeb's will make you holler wild. Zeb's will really clean you fly.
Steve Roddy.
WKIX.
WKIX FM.
Raleigh.
4 o'clock of a big 85, and I must confess I'm a little on edge today. I feel about as frustrated as Martha Mitchell trying to play charades.
This is Doug Limerick, WKIX 2020 News.
Mike Mitchell.
WKIX.
WKIX FM.
Raleigh.
8 o'clock at the big 85. Goose Creek Symphony at WKIX. For those of you who did not get what you wanted for Christmas, you can go over Santa's head. Oh, Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? It's 8:03 with Mike Mitchell.
Rick Dees, who's now the #1 radio personality in Los Angeles.
Rick Dees.
You got Rick Dees from WKIX. It's 10:03 and from 1971, beginning of the end in funky Nassau. A lot like the funky chicken, only the feathers don't get in your way.
One of the most enduring personalities at KIX was Jimmy Capps.
My best to you.
Our Best to You was the original Love Songs dedication show.
Our Best to You. Music of a midnight mood with melodies to complement the hour and musical shadows to play on your heart. This is Jimmy Capps. For the nocturne we send as Our Best to You.
When Jimmy was on late at night, KIX slowed down the pace and the station took on the sound of Johnny Mathis and the 12th of Never. Jimmy died many years ago, but is still alive in the memory of a generation of people who listen to him every night.
That's my best to you.
KIX was bigger than life.
WKIX, Channel 85. Brings you all there is to hear. It's the South's greatest station.
Truth is, it was in a dumpy little building outside of Cary. It was really just a transmitter shack. You'd never know it from all the images we created on the air. You'd think we were in a luxurious setting that had a swimming pool for listeners and employees. It did. I made it up myself. The KIX Cool Pool.
WKIX, Channel 85.
Pure theater of the mind. And slogans? Did we ever have them? The Giant of the South was my personal favorite. Perhaps it was overreaching, but with 10,000 watts on AM and 29,000 watts on FM, we did claim to cover most of the population of North Carolina. By our calculations, we reached over 2.5 million people. We fancied ourselves as the South's version of powerhouses like WLS in Chicago or WABC in New York. We were at least all of that and more in our minds. Now that was a radio station. WKIX, Channel 85. It was a happy place in time. In my mind, it will always be.
You'll find the fun radiates around WKIX, Channel 85.